Diners at the Dallas Piccadilly Cafeteria on Commerce Street got a floor show with their meal today. First off, 11 civil rights demonstrators, 8 Negroes and 3 whites, asked to be served at the downtown eatery. A representative of the cafeteria refuses. The demonstrators say they will hold a sit-in if he doesn't allow them to eat, but the representative remains firm. The demonstrators also remain firm, and they take up positions inside the cafeteria's entrance lobby. A spokesman for the Dallas Coordinating Committee for Civil Rights, Clarence Broadnax, says the sit-in demonstration has been planned for about 2 months. Broadnax was unable to get into the sit-in group because of the large crowd outside the besieged cafeteria. The demonstrators sang, "We shall overcome." The second act took place outside. 2 men showed up carrying anti-integration placards and began picketing the Piccadilly. As the sit-ins continued singing civil rights tunes, the segregationist pickets were joined by some black Muslims, militant black supremacists. The Muslims sold newspapers and passed out literature. 45 minutes have now passed, and the demonstrators kneel and begin praying. The show for the Piccadilly patrons ends with a smash finale as a police paddy wagon pulls up to carry away the actors. Police officers invade the entrance lobby and begin carrying out the 11 demonstrators. As they are carried to the paddy wagon, they continue singing songs such as "Freedom Now" and "We Shall Overcome." The women demonstrators are led into squad cars while the men are stashed in the paddy wagon. The Dallas Coordinating Committee for Civil Rights says the sit-ins will continue at Dallas restaurants and the school administration building until total integration becomes a reality. Today's demonstrators were released after being charged with violating a city ordinance forbidding blocking an entrance to a public building. They say they will return to the cafeteria tomorrow. Attempts by Negroes to gain entry to the Piccadilly Cafeteria in downtown Dallas are continuing in the face of restraining orders issued by District Judge Blankenship. Attorneys representing the cafeteria today filed a new motion in an attempt to have some of the demonstrators held in contempt of court. That motion will be heard Thursday along with motions for injunctions sought by the management of the cafeteria. Raymond Fredericks, a baker at the cafeteria, is stationed at the door today to turn away the Negroes who seek admittance. Today's motion asked specifically that the Reverend Earl E. Allen and Ted Armstrong be cited for contempt. Both have been told in a court order to stay at least 50 feet from the cafeteria. Manager Jamie Ramig says he held off asking for contempt citations to give the pickets time to obey the court order. But, he says, the demonstrating has gone too far and the cafeteria now would not consider voluntary integration. Ramig says he has hired photographers to take pictures of the demonstrators so each can be identified in court. He estimates he has lost 25% of his noon business, largely office workers, who don't care to push past the demonstrators to eat. Ramig says as far as he knows he is being hit by demonstrations because his is the only eating place in downtown Dallas not already accepting Negro customers. And, says Ramig, things have gone too far for him to back down. 16-year-old Mary Clara Wilson and 4 other civil rights demonstrators are scheduled to appear in court tomorrow to answer contempt citations. The demonstrators will be required to show that they should not be held in contempt of court. Mary's father, attorney John Wilson Jr., also has been served with a contempt citation, although he did not take an active part in today's demonstration outside the Piccadilly Cafeteria in Dallas. This is the 12th day of demonstrations at the Piccadilly, which does not serve Negroes. 2 contempt citations were served yesterday when this film was taken. Receiving the citations were the Reverend Earl Allen, a Methodist minister, and Ted Armstrong, chairman of the Dallas chapter of the Congress on Racial Equality. The demonstrators will answer the contempt citations in Judge Blankenship's court. Blankenship issued temporary injunctions June 2nd and 4th, forbidding demonstrations within 50 feet of the Piccadilly.
Have you served, sir? Am I in the right line, sir? Thank you.
You don't have to go anywhere. The rest of them are in line.
Have you served, sir?
No, sir.
Is this the line that we're in?
Which one is the line?
Oh, I see. They're going around us, so.
That's what it is.
So we can't serve you.
Dallas police keep a polite check on things, but the line of demonstrators outside the downtown Piccadilly cafeteria is orderly, as it has been for almost 2 weeks now. The 25 or so Negro and white pickets are back at the segregated eating facility, free of the collection of restraining orders and contempt citations brought against them earlier. District Judge Blankenship okayed a restraining order against the group June 2nd, but today, at a hearing on a permanent injunction, he threw the whole business out, including 5 contempt citations served on the demonstrators. The judge reset a hearing on the cafeteria's motion for a restraining order after explaining that the Piccadilly's earlier motion failed to specify it was asking for a temporary injunction. John Wilson Jr., a defendant in the cafeteria's suit and one of 6 lawyers representing the group, is asked what's the next legal step.
Legally, the next thing that can be foreseen at this time is that there may be a hearing sometime after June 29th on the merits of the Piccadilly Cafeteria suit. Other things may develop, but they can't be foreseen by us.
Where are you going now?
I'm going on downtown. I believe these people are going down to the Piccadilly Cafeteria and try to get something to eat.
Almost 3 weeks now, a group of Negro and white demonstrators has been appearing almost daily at the Piccadilly Cafeteria in downtown Dallas. So far, the Negroes have been unsuccessful in their efforts to obtain service. Today, 2 of the group are arrested by Dallas police and taken to the police station to face charges of obstructing entry to a public building. They are a Negro minister, Earl Allen, and a 20-year-old white youth, Steve Hancock. Within a short time, the remainder of demonstrators appear at the police station, still singing. In the group are about a dozen Negroes and 10 whites. Last week, the demonstrators won a legal round when an injunction against them was dissolved. Attorney John Wilson Jr. says the demonstrators stood in the doorway because they were tired of not getting service in the cafeteria. The group in the hallway spends some 15 minutes singing and praying before dispersing. Allen and Hancock were charged with violating a city ordinance and declined to make bonds of $15 each. The other demonstrators were orderly and police merely looked on. The 2 accused men remain in jail. Demonstrators who've been picketing this segregated Piccadilly cafeteria in downtown Dallas since May 30th have lately been spending almost as much time in court as in the picket line. Today, District Judge D. Brown Walker heard a motion by the demonstrators to dissolve a restraining order which was issued against them on Monday by Judge Walker at the request of the cafeteria. Defense attorneys Charles Morris, who's standing, and John Wilson contend that the cafeteria's application for a restraining order is faulty and failing to state that Negroes and those with them are excluded from the eating place. Cafeteria manager James Ramig takes the stand to deny another defense claim that the cafeteria exhibits no outside sign saying it's a segregated place. Ramig testifies there is a sign in the foyer proclaiming the right to refuse service to anyone. Ramig estimates that the picketing has hurt the cafeteria's business to the approximate tune of $200 a day. Judge Walker sees no reason to dismiss the restraining order, so he doesn't. It continues in effect until June 24th, when there will be a hearing on the cafeteria's request for a temporary injunction. The group returns to its vigil outside the still segregated Piccadilly. They've been joined lately by a demonstrator against the demonstrators, carrying a Confederate flag and a sheaf of signs. One commends the cafeteria for its stalwart stand, one pushes Governor Wallace for president, and another warns of race mixing. The pickets scored one gain today. It had been their habit to picket the cafeteria part of the time and the deluxe diner at 1937 Commerce part of the time. Today, when they showed up there, they found the doors open and the demonstrators got the service they've been wanting. So it's back to the Piccadilly, where the pickets are required to stay at least 10 feet from the door. The pickets outside the Piccadilly cafeteria have somehow blended into the Dallas landscape. Sometimes they are animated enough to attract some attention, but they've been pounding the pavement for more than 3 weeks now, and most people, except for a few visitors, just pass right on by without stepping to look. The demonstrators have attracted some counter pickets, but there has been no violence. The situation, however, seems to be coming to a head. District Judge Walker has called a hearing to determine whether a temporary restraining order against the Piccadilly demonstrations should be toughened to a temporary injunction. Witnesses include the cafeteria's manager, James Ramig. Also waiting to testify are Ted Armstrong at left and the Reverend Earl Allen. Both men are leaders in the Piccadilly demonstrations. The first witness is Armstrong, who says he is co-chairman of the CORE organization in Dallas. Armstrong says he and several others attempted to be served at the cafeteria about 2 weeks before the first demonstration. He calls the initial attempt an operational test run, and he says he and others were refused service. Judge Walker doesn't quite catch all that, and neither does anyone else because of the racket outside the courthouse. The JCs in Dallas for their annual convention are staging a parade, and the Mississippi JCs have brought along a Confederate flag that stretches from one side of the street to the other. Court is recessed until after the parade. When the hearing resumes, Ramig takes the stand and says it is the policy of his company to serve only those customers they choose to serve. He says the demonstrators outside the cafeteria make it difficult for customers to enter. Ramig says he's losing business, about $2,000 worth, since the demonstrations began. Judge Walker makes his ruling immediately after final arguments. He grants the temporary injunction which prohibits Armstrong, the Reverend Mr. Allen, and members of the CORE organization from demonstrating within 50 feet of the cafeteria. Apparently, other persons still will be allowed to demonstrate. Attorney John Wilson, Jr., representing the demonstrators, is asked to comment on Walker's ruling.
First, of course, we disagree most violently with it. We believe that the order is an unlawful infringement of the rights of the defendants here, Mr. Armstrong and Reverend Allen, and the members of the Congress of Racial Equality, in that it prevents them from expressing their opinions and it prevents them from using the streets of the city of Dallas. We don't intend to lie idly by and to accept this order without appealing it, without seeing that these people have their rights and have the opportunity to express their rights. As to what will happen in the future at the Piccadilly, I think you can be assured that what has been going on will continue to go on, because the Piccadilly demonstrations have not been limited to the defendants in this lawsuit. They're composed, the people who are down there are people from all walks of life, from different organizations, people who don't belong to any particular organizations. These are just people who are caught up in this protest against the segregated policy of the Piccadilly Cafeteria. Until we've had an opportunity to see the order as drafted and signed by the judge, I'm going to advise Reverend Allen and Mr. Armstrong to stay a good distance away from the Piccadilly.